Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Thriving Adoptees podcast. Today, I'm delighted to be joined again by Danielle. How are you?
Hi, I'm good, Simon. How are you?
I'm great. Yeah, Danielle Gaudette, a star. She's been on the show last year. She's been checking in, watching some stuff I've been doing for the webinars, and we came up with this idea. No, she flagged a topic that seems to be close to her heart, and we thought that would be I thought it'd be useful to kind of explore that for the podcast, and that's about empathy. So that it's a hot topic. It's a subject close to your heart, right, Danielle?
Well, I think it's a very important subject. I found it to be a very important thing and something something I have to check in on, and I also use a lot constantly in life. So
yeah. And I suggested, looking at it for in empathy for our fellow adoptees, adoptive parents, and our birth parents too. Where have you seen this in its in its biggest sense for you? What's the biggest empathy experience or realization that you've had?
Yeah, I think it's even wider, I mean, we can bring it in, narrow it into this, what we deal with as adoptees and in the adoption constellation community. But I think I've been exploring it from long ago, because I just had so much duress about the state of the world from the time that I was very young, and I worried so much about humanity and the planet. And then as I worked as a healer and lived my life and observed the world and society and all the things going on, I just I could feel more and more. I guess it's especially from working with people in the body and brain centers over the last 16 years, like so many walks of life. I meet so many walks of life, and it's just in order for me to maintain peace, which is really my standard. What I'm interested in for this planet and for humanity is peace, more harmonious coexistence. In order to get there, empathy feels critical. And I'm not just talking about that as a philosophy, but I really felt that day to day, meeting by meeting. I have to practice to empathize with the person in front of me if I also want to be understood by them, and if I also want to complete our interaction in a harmonious way. And if that's my number one goal, empathy proved to be critical over and over again. So that's why I think I just said this too, even before we started here. Empathy can apply to every single person in any single relationship. Empathy seems to be a key ingredient for healing and peace and reconciliation.
Yeah.
I know I just said many things, but yeah, right.
It heals, doesn't it?
It's very healing.
And I'm a kind of practical example guy. Do you know what I mean? Like I'm so right now, okay, I'm thinking, why didn't she answer the example question? Why didn't she? Do you know what I mean? Which is an interesting one, isn't it? So, as we're talking about peace, I've asked you a question, you've answered it in a slightly different way, and I'm trying to bring you back around to kind of where I want to go on it, which isn't particularly empathetic, is it?
That's right. But that's how it's so powerful, right? Because if you just empathize with me and then say that to me, what you just said, and then I empathize with you. Oh, I said, and then I self-reflect. Oh, okay, this is the direction Simon wants to go. And then I can pivot that way instead of being like, why did he say that? And why is he thinking like that now? And then, conflict arises, right? I mean, this is just not, there's no conflict between us, but this is just what happens to people in situations. So if you share that with me, so I guess communication is another like story for another day, but it starts with empathy, empathizing. So I can feel, okay, I'm back to where Simon's feeling, and let me align with that. And I can empathize with you. So even if you gave the example just now that you weren't empathizing with me, maybe, and then you'd share that. And then, okay, one side can empathize and still healing can begin.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, if you want a very, very specific example, I for sure had to call upon great amounts of empathy in my relationship with my birth mother. If like, we're going to talk about the subject a little bit here, get closer to the topic. Yeah.
Yeah. So tell me some more. It's a great. I've listened to your audio book. I am going on vacation next month, and I will be reading, but that's the only time I do read, really. But I listen to, as you know, I listen to audios all the time. So the fact that you've got an audio book, and it's awesome, obviously, is a big thing. And I listen to that, and I'm trying to think, where was the moment. I'm thinking about you did a lot of sitting in hotel rooms, didn't you? In a restaurant.
Yeah.
You hung out together. You had some amounts, I'm not sure if it's large amounts of white wine, seem to remember.
Okay, you remember my book
Oh, yeah. The one that pops out is the moment when you does your mum say, it's time to move on to talk about stuff other than just adoption? Did she do that?
She did say that. That's, I think you're pointing towards the key chapter there. That's the chapter called Mercy, where, and actually that was the big turning point for me with her, where she said to me, she went around the table one Thanksgiving, just to share the story a bit. I was with her and my two half brothers one Thanksgiving, and we were like, let's all go around and say what we're thankful to each other for. That'll be fun. And then she went around and she said, she said to my one brother, she was thankful to him for the wisdom, and she learned so much from him. And to my other brother, for the joy, like the joie de vivre that they live sort of together, that he brings to her life. And then for me, she said she was thankful for my mercy, like upon her, something like this. And it just really like it, my brain was like, I cannot compute this. Like I didn't, and of course I didn't reveal that at that dinner, and I just kind of smiled and was like, listened. But when I went back to my room that night, I was like Googling the definition, the meaning of mercy, because it seemed like such a religious word or something. It just wasn't hitting me right. I was like, what exactly is she saying? And then the definition is like kind of forgiveness or grace given by a person who has the power to punish or harm me. That's in the definition. And then I realized at that moment, wow, does she see me as that kind of person who has the power to punish or harm her? But instead I gave her mercy. And then I went into a deep reflection about her, and I realized I had not been empathizing. So I realized I had not been empathizing. And that was long into the reunion. That was probably, over a decade into the reunion, 15 years more. I would have to really calculate it, but well into the reunion, when I realized at that moment I had not been empathizing with her all along. I had just been focusing on me and my pain and my struggle and unraveling my own inner landscape. But I hadn't paused to feel maybe what she was going through. I might have not been mature enough, old enough. And then I felt, oh, wow, her pain and her shame. And really, I tried to get into her shoes. This is kind of another way to describe empathy in a way, and feel what she might be feeling, because empathy also really is like feeling in the feeling, right? And then it was really sad to see from those eyes, and heavy and kind of shocking, and something really opened in me at that time. And I feel like I grew up. I grew up like 20 years in one moment through doing that. And my heart changed to her. And then after that, she said, I don't want to talk about the adoption anymore. And I was ready to embrace that because I could see from her eyes.
Yeah. So was it that you felt that perhaps you had been yeah, I don't know how to ask this question. I don't really know exactly what it is. Have you heard the word malevolent? Have you heard the word
Malevolent.
Yeah,
Like
malevolent.
the opposite of benevolent, kind of, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know really what it means, but so because she used this word mercy.
Yeah.
It the thing that popped straight into my head was in the emperor at the games, the gladiatorial games, games where mercy is like, you're going to go thumb up or thumb down, right? It's like you've got some sort of power. So was it that you felt that perhaps you hadn't been a totally benevolent force in your mother's heart, and you needed to, if she was using this word grace, she still felt some sort of threat, or
Yeah, that was the realization. That was the realization. My eyes opened to that. Prior to that, I had been just so narrow, tunnel vision about my own thing and me, my pain, my this, my that. And then I realized, oh, while I'm over here, like in my own pain and almost projecting onto her my pain, right? She's the one who's in the position to punish or harm me in my mind, not realizing that she had seen me in the same way, and that I was such a pain. I don't know the right word to use here, like a pain point or like a painful memory. Or I just realized that inevitably when my birth mother looks at me, no matter how much she loves me, no matter how much we have gone through together, I always will symbolize an extraordinarily painful memory and decision in her life. Just no matter what, I somehow, and then there's guilt and shame inside her heart about that. And that's why she feels I have power to punish or harm her, or reject her, or blame her, or punish her. That comes from her own guilt and shame. I just saw it really clearly, and I understood at that moment all the things I hadn't understood up till that moment, related to her different behaviors and my different reactions and her reactions. I was not empathizing with her. So I was not feeling. And then because I couldn't feel her, I couldn't get out of my own struggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've been listening to some stuff on a course I'm doing at the moment, and it's an online course with a coach. And one of the things that we've been looking at is shame. And she uses this isn't adoption related, it's more like consciousness stuff rather than anything adoption. I would guess I'm the only adoptee on the course. Well, yes, I know. Unless the other people are hiding it, but in the area, the consciousness areas that I explore, and the communities that I'm in, learning communities, there's almost zero adoptees. Interesting.
Yeah.
But we've been looking at shame, and she looks at it in different ways, and it's almost as if she gives an example of somebody that's overweight, but can't go to the gym because when she goes to the gym, people are going to see her in a lycra, and it's gonna make it worse. So she can't move forward. She can't lose weight because she can't go to the gym. So it's almost like the shame is cuts both ways and keeps us stuck.
Definitely.
And I'm trying to think about what that means. So we're making ourselves more vulnerable.
Yeah. Yeah. Right.
We can't make ourselves more vulnerable because of the shame. Right.
Yeah. It blocks us from like moving towards the solution, and it just kind of makes the problem worse.
Yeah. I was talking to a fellow adoptee yesterday for the podcast, and her reunion is at the complete opposite end of the spectrum to yours, right? And her mum, her birth mum, came out fighting, like not verbally, but with words, like. So when the adoption agency, social worker, whatever, had spoken to the birth mother had a really angry reaction, right? And like almost like she was about to do a cease and desist order, like one of those things.
Yeah.
And it was like, that's like how in that situation, the only thing to be for our own peace of mind, he talks about maintaining our peace. The only way to be is to be curious or empathetic, because otherwise it's that secondary rejection is gonna is gonna blow us apart, right?
Yes. And yes, 100%. Now, with my own empathy for adoptees who have those stories that I didn't have, and just knowing how my own rejection and abandonment stuff shows up in life, I could never say to that person, like, just see it this way and be done with it, like, have empathy. No, it's extraordinarily painful. And then there's so much of you have to process your own pain. You kind of have to empathize with yourself for a long time until maybe some moment. And that's really what happens. We wake up the sense little by little, and then some moment we're ready to see. That's why empathy is so important. You can't be like, hey, you just empathize with her, like, get over it. That's insensitivity, and that's not even fair or true. Everyone needs their own process. Everyone needs their own time and space to hurt if they need to hurt, or to unravel what they need to unravel, until they awaken the sense of the empathy themselves. But I do want to jump to a slightly different thing that I thought of when you were telling me that story, which is now I have a good relationship with my birth mother. We're closer than we ever have been, and we can talk more honestly. Both of us have done some of our own work. I mean, I've done a ton, and I can see her changes too. And, I've told her since I started sharing Healing Tree and working in the adoption community, wow, there's so many adoptees who have stories like this, where their birth parent, did a second rejection. And then she just said to me, oh, Danielle, that's just their shame behaving. That's their shame acting out. So she had empathy for them, the birth mother in this story. She understands because she's experienced that kind of shame. I have not experienced that kind of shame in this life.
Yeah.
So we all have to empathize and then help each other expand a little bit our sight of what we learned with that empathy. I think that's also important for our collective healing.
Yeah. I love that phrase, their shame behaving.
Yeah.
Their shame behaving.
Yeah.
Because in the parenting space, parents are often told, well, they're told to judge the behavior, not the child, or something. You don't make the kid wrong. You just look at the behavior rather than the kid, which is an interesting one. I was talking to a birth mum for the podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we were talking about shame, and she talked about and I said something about adoptees' shame, and she was like, "What?" And she didn't. She wasn't quite. She wasn't quite as extreme as that, but like that had never kind of occurred to her. I said, "What you mean?" I mean this primal wound stuff, and her heart broke open, like in that moment, that she clearly hadn't put the. She's a very conscious individual, this lady, but she hadn't put the two things together. The primal wound is shown. It was almost as if, like, you two, because her stuff is, maybe I call it subconscious shame or something like that. But obviously, the birth mum is going through this. Our loss, or our ambiguous loss, and all that sort of, all the pre-verbal stuff, all the kind of hazy stuff that we have as adoptees. They a birth mother's shame is in Technicolor. It's, do you mean it's in full detail, ultra HD, Technicolor, everything's on it. It's so unambiguous,
right? And
ours is far more ambiguous.
Right. I wonder if that's because I completely understand what you're saying, and I felt that too. And I wonder if that's because they made a conscious choice, right? With a conscious thinking mind. Whether they were under the influence of somebody else very strongly. Of course, I know there's a lot of that's gone on, but still, as an adult, they made a choice. So I think it's more burned into their brain as right? Like they remember that they got pregnant and didn't mean to. They remember that they had to make a decision about that. They remember the 9 months. They remember the birth. They remember the relinquishment. Like they remember so consciously because they were adults. But for us, it was so unconscious. It just we're born and the person who birthed me didn't keep me, and then it just like boop, like something happened in our brains, and we're just still trying to like, yeah, it's very hazy. I think the wound itself, that particular aspect of that wound it feels blind. It's like a blind spot. It's very hazy. So I think it's two different colors of shame, as you use the word technicolor. But yeah, so we still can empathize at the place of shame, even though I think we can't understand their shame because they were very conscious, and they have maybe a hard time to understand ours because whoever wasn't adopted has a hard time to understand it, right?
Wow. One of the things that's coming out for me, Danielle, is I don't know if I've ever shared this with you, but I feel very susceptible, kind of like easily influenced.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like gullible to a certain degree, right? I take on stuff quite easily. I don't know have I expressed that to you before? I don't know.
Haven't, no.
No, okay. And so when I read the primal wound, I really took it on. And when I really took it, really taking it on took me down. Do you know what I mean? Like I believed it.
Right.
I believed it. Now, I read it, whatever it was, 8 years ago, whatever. I'd done a whole load of work before around my adoption, self-identity and consciousness and stuff. I'd done a whole load of work before, which was almost like my emotional safety net. Yeah. So when I read 6 years after I'd done that work, and I've been doing the work ever since, 6 years after I started doing that work, I read the Primal Wound. So it was almost like my emotional safety net meant that I didn't fall too far. Okay, because I had a level of consciousness that was starting to develop within me, but I still believed it. I still it still took me down, and it's just something's just dawning on me. Like you have these, because we talked about this loss being hazy.
Yes.
When other people come along and fill in the blanks, right? Give us an alternative picture. So our own view. I'm struggling a little bit here because this is a new area for me. So let's say our autobiography, right? So our autobiography, the start of our autobiography is very hazy. We don't know, right? We're not sure. We're not sure about this loss, how we felt about it, whatever, and then somebody comes along with an anthology. This is how adoption impacts adoptees, and we take it on board because the human mind doesn't really like hazy. It doesn't really like uncertainty. So what we do is we kind of lock on. We get missile lock. I had missile lock on the Primal Wound.
You got that, yeah.
Yeah,
right.
But I've heard it. I've heard so many other adoptees on other podcasts and in conversations saying the same sort of thing. They may not, but they may not. They may not blame the Primal Wound. They may reduce. They may relate some other kind of trauma story. And so we've got this unclear picture that's hazy. Somebody comes along, somebody in authority. It's no accident, is it, that the word authority starts with the word author. right? So people that write books like yourself, there is an authority around them, and then we're kind of, me and other adoptees, we latch on to this story, in the place of a hazy pre-verbal memory, and that can harm us, right? It harmed me. It hurt.
So I think what's important to see is, I mean, I think that's true for all information, Simon, and like the world. I kind of feel that about life itself. Like, I was just this pure little being, and then the world told me this. The world told me this is scary, and this is good, and this is bad, and don't do this, and if this, then this. And I took it all on, and I've been suffering ever since. I kind of feel like that. So I think that's true for all information. Can imprint deep. This is our preconceptions and our beliefs we have to undo. So for me, when I read The Primal Wound, I was also along in my healing. It also brought some pain to me because it was kind of hard to, my feeling was, oh, I don't want to be in this box that I can never get out of. I was seeking spiritual freedom and growth, right? So what I ended up doing with the book, I kind of read it, put it down, read it, put it down, read it, put it down. And by the very end, I could see where she was going. She was trying to lead to healing towards the very end. And I just concluded, I'm going to take the information that was useful, and I'm going to leave what's not working for me. Now, as a child, I didn't do that well. So the stuff that was imprinted way back then, I'm still working on that stuff. But the book, I was able to decipher. And the interesting thing, kind of linking to what you're talking about right now, is that the thing I took from the book, which I put into my own book, was just her kind of definition of the primal wound, being that after we're physically born, I think I talked about this in our last interview, after we're physically born, even though physically we can be independent of our mother because we've grown enough in the 9 months, right? But energetically, we're not independent, and our psyche is still forming inside of the energy field. And because I'm an energy worker and I get it, I totally understood that, how through being held and all the breastfeeding and everything, the care of the mother, our psyche is still being formed. And so if that's removed, something is affected in our psyche. And I feel from myself and every adoptee I've ever met, exactly what you just said at the beginning of this conversation. We take everything on like a sponge so easily. We just take it all in because some part of our energetic boundary was broken at that moment. This doesn't make it bad. If I know this, I can take care of myself better. So that information empowered me. Oh, that's why I'm a sponge. Oh, that's why I struggle this way. And that helped me understand myself.
Yeah.
So in that way, it was useful for me.
Yeah. And I heard this. So the course that I'm talking about is a lady called Claire Diamond that's doing the show thing, and she used a phrase this morning or yesterday when I was listening to the online course. She said we're wired to acquire, as in wired to acquire knowledge.
Yeah.
So whilst we're thinking, oh yeah, this is, and you're saying we take on stuff, and I'm thinking I take on stuff, and my body, like my mind's like a sponge taking stuff up. I also feel that that's not just an adoptee thing. That's just a human thing. We are wired to acquire. And yeah, so I want to talk about a little bit about my empathy for my birth mother too, right? So you've shared a little bit about yours. So when I said Oh, I came up with a. I've just been on the did another pre podcast conversation with an adoptee. So somebody on the East Coast rather than you, like obviously on the West Coast, aren't you? And I came up with this. Cool metaphor, right? And it's the healing curve. You know, so most of the time we're talking about the learning curve, aren't we? You know, right? We talk about the learning curve. I thought, well, what about the healing curve? That sounds good, doesn't it? So a very precise, big shift along my healing curve came when I read that letter about the teddy bear, the letter that I read out. So I'll put a link into the notes, listeners, so you can watch this. So a replay of a webinar, and halfway through the webinar, I read this letter from my birth mother. Not a letter to me, but it's a letter about me. It's a letter to a social worker at the adoption agency. And similar to you, it was the moment when I realized this isn't about me. This is about her. This is about the painful situation that she was in. This is about this letter is oozing with pain. It's oozing with shame. It's oozing. She is in a really, really unempowered place. There's a couple of points where she's just begging, basically. She's begging the social worker to get my parents' authority for her son, me, to receive this teddy bear. And the tears came down my face, and they washed away those very brief 40 seconds or so of anger towards my birth mother. Just went. Now, this wasn't Simon deciding, right? This wasn't Simon deciding to get over this thing. This was a spontaneous healing curve moment that happened, a shift along my healing curve that happened without me having anything to do with it. You know, I couldn't help but I was going to say forgive that, but that's not the right word at all. That's not what it felt like.
Yeah, you just opened your compassion, right?
Yeah, no, I didn't open my compassion. My compassion opened.
Yeah, your compassion opened. Yeah, it wasn't conscious. I understand.
For me, I'm not quite sure why I jumped on that. Actually, I jumped on that really, Danielle, perhaps a little bit abruptly, right? But there's so much in this world about empowerment, and it's us. We've got to do it. Yeah, I didn't do that. Little Simon didn't do that. It wasn't me opening my compassion. My compassion opened naturally. I had nothing to do with it. It's like you know, like on a different scale. You know, it's like that idea, that healing curve metaphor, came to me as a download from a cosmic. A mentor of mine used to talk about cosmic faxes, right? But obviously, faxes are a bit out of date now, aren't they? Cosmic emails. It's a message, you know. It's a message from the universe, or it's a message from God, or a message from consciousness. It's not. I didn't sit down and thought, right, okay, I need to come up with some new metaphors today. Oh, right, yeah. What about healing curve? It was unintentional. It's something that came through me, not to me, I guess. And the reason I'm banging on about this is because if we one of my mentors, Liz, says one of Einstein's best quotes is something like, the most important question we can ask ourselves is the world for me or against me? If we think the world is against us, then we're going to have to fight, right? But if we think the world is for us, and it's giving us this stuff, it's giving us these insights, then we're more likely to accept them. We're more likely to be open to them. I don't know what. You're nodding, but I'm at the end. I'm at the edge of explaining that. I don't know how far I can go. But does that make sense? Does that?
Yeah. It totally makes sense. I feel that too. Of course, there's the things that we have no control over, that we get these cosmic downloads or whatever we want to call them. But then there's also the things that we can do. So we can keep sensitizing ourselves. So the more we connect with ourselves and feel ourselves and honestly and sincerely sink into our own feeling and practice, the first relationship to practice is with myself, like practicing to listen to myself through the feeling and allow that feeling and give it space and empathize with my own feeling. Our senses are waking up, and then we become kind of more able to fully feel those experiences. Yeah, that's what we can do. So we can actually train our senses to sense my feeling in my heart. And then we can't control when those downloads are going to come, but we can keep sensitizing ourselves. And when they do come, it's a blessing. And if they don't come, still, we're getting an opportunity to keep cultivating with each and every single feeling we have, but also human that we meet. Every single human is a chance to, like, just like you did with your birth mother. So you caught the sense of putting yourself in her shoes for a moment, or however, whenever it happened. But anyway, that was the end result. You caught the sense from that. So now you can apply that to every single person you meet. You could apply that to someone who's being very mean to you. You could apply that to another adoptee who has a different story than you. You could apply that to another like adoptive parent that you have a different opinion that. You can apply it to everybody.
Yeah. So there was a point at that webinar. So when you pinged me the email after the webinar, and you said something along the lines of continuing, to develop your empathy. What was it that led you to do that?
Because I think that you had such an amazing experience, and it was so strong for you. And then you had some pain that was really dissolved from that moment. But so even like when you talk about the pain that you got from the primal wound, reading the book, there was a moment that you received pain, and there was another time of your life where pain was dissolved, and you so much hold on to that as such a profound experience, and it was for you. But when I hear the other people asking questions, that they didn't have the same experience, but you know your experience so strongly. And then you could either be like, this is my experience, and yeah, I don't know your experience. Or you could be like, oh, I feel you. Wow, what did that feel like? I feel you. I didn't have that experience. Some softening to feel them. So I felt your delivery was great because you're so passionate about and the topic is so profound. And then when I hear you interacting with people, I feel, Simon can keep practicing to feel that not everybody had that experience as him. You know that, but as a feeling the person, empathizing fully with your whole being.
Yeah.
That part I was like, oh, I want to share this with Simon.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you. I love it. And you know, I can think that I found some of that stuff juggling. I found doing the webinar and juggling the questions and juggling the like some of the tech, and then like, okay, I'm already kind of behind where I want to be, and maybe, yeah, and so I was probably a combination. It's the time management and like, okay, can I get, I talked about the idea that maybe I'll do smaller groups in future, or sometimes I'll do some smaller groups so that there's more time, and that, you know, maybe I'm feeling a little bit under pressure in those moments, and when we're under pressure, then obviously the empathy is going to be, there's a smaller window for the empathy to be.
Exactly. So it wasn't really, it was not intended to be any kind of criticism. It was more intended to be like, because I have so much experience, and these are like, as a coach, kind of like, these are the things I've experienced along the way. I know that feeling of being like, I got to handle all these things. I really don't have time to care, to feel you, you know what I mean? Like, it's the bottom of my list, but like, and then as we retrospect, you know, oh, I can keep expanding the capacity. So it was just sort of like, I was speaking to you from that place, because I think at the end of the day, that's like, it became the most important thing to me in working with people over the years. Like, I'll be in the middle of a workshop, I'll have like hours of stuff I have to do, but if this person in front of me like doesn't understand, or they keep asking, or I feel that they're, you know, disgruntled in some way, I need to pause and fully empathize with them, even if it's like messing up my schedule or whatever it's doing, because it's kind of, it became my priority. Yeah.
It's that thing. It's about them, not about us again, isn't it?
Yeah, that's my learning. So I think I was just sharing my learning there. Yeah. And isn't it true, right? But won't the world be so different if we all just stopped to do that with each other all the time? Like, you see fighting everywhere, and the world is more, especially our society is more divided than ever. Everyone is against and fighting, and you said, and it hurt me. But if we were all just trying to up our empathy game and feel each other, this is how we feel we connect, and we feel our similarity, our likeness, and our heart opens there, and then we cannot hurt each other.
Yeah, I'll scribble that down. That's the title. That's the title for the podcast, for this podcast.
What is it?
Upping our empathy game.
Upping our empathy game. Yeah, that's a good one, right?
Yeah.
I think we all need that, and we need that in the adoption community. We need that everywhere. As I see, everywhere I look, I stop looking until I see empathy. I'm not interested to hear at all anybody's opinion unless we're going to empathize with all the parts. Then we can all open our ears and mind, just as we did. We had to empathize with our birth mother, and then, oh, now I'm expanded. My awareness is expanded. And then that a birth mother empathized with you, with adoptee shame, and then expanded. And that's a conversation. That's healing. That's hope. That's my opinion. Thank you for listening.
I was just thinking, she's going for a you know, this is the, you know, this is the mic drop moment. This is healing. This is hope. And I thought that's great. And then she said, "This is my opinion."
I think it's a good opinion, though. I think it's
Yeah,
something we
I
should
think
all consider.
so. Yeah, I think that's kind of a nice place to bring it in, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So it's not about me.
That's right.
It's not about me. I was thinking about how defensive everybody is, you know, like
Yeah,
everything is, oh no,
yeah, yeah.
uh,
Right. And that's like back to what my birth mother said. That's shame behaving. That's our pain acting out. The defensiveness, I'm right, you're wrong. That's somebody's in pain. That's pain that's unprocessed. It makes my heart ache. So I empathize with those people too. I empathize because I was that person when I was young, when I was very, very young. Like
yeah.
I was an evil little middle schooler. Like I had pain and my pain was behaving a lot. I get it. But the hurt that we have the capacity to do is too big. So it's time we have, I think it's really time we have to consider upping that game, really.
Cool.
Upping the empathy game.
Thanks so much, Danielle, and thank you, listeners. Slightly different kind of format today. I like doing different formats. Well, different is good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Simon.
Thanks a lot. Thanks to listeners. We'll speak to you very soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.